All right. So that was a little weird, but I believe we are live.
Yep.
I'm here twice now. My computer acted really stupid for a second, but we are live. Thank you, everybody who is watching and those who will watch in the future. Um, my name is Josh, and I'm here with my co-host Jimmy.
How you doing, guys?
You guys are watching RPG Enlightenment. So we haven't really been putting out anything recently. Life has just been really weird, and so we're gonna try to continue with where we left off. One thing that we promised that we would begin to one of the first videos that we were gonna make was what is an RPG, and that is where we are going to begin now. So Jimmy, if you want to take it, it's all yours.
All right. So one of the first things that we're going to talk about is what exactly is an RPG. It stands for role play game, and it's a much different system than things like card games, dice games. Even though it is kind of a dice game, but that's just a mechanic of it. And there are RPGs that are or can be purely storytelling. But it's different than a lot of other kind of games because you are in complete control of a character. It's essentially your avatar that you're using. And in most cases, the more, I guess, common cases, at least about what we're going to be talking about, are going to have the games are run by a GM, a game master, or a DM, which is a dungeon master for like Dungeons and Dragons. And so let's see. I took a couple of notes just so we can kind of stay on track. Let's see. So there's a couple of different kinds of RPGs, and we're going to go over all of them in a little bit of detail. We're not going to go too much into them, though. Just give you an overview of what they are.
Well, before you do that, and we start actually getting into some of the notes, I mean, what is RPG? What does it stand for?
It's a role play game. It is you playing the role of a specific character, a character that is yours. You're generally not controlling multiple characters, such as in some board games like chess or what is it, Risk, things of that nature. It's you really being a single character and controlling all their actions and how they do things. Instead of only having a couple or one way to do, you can only move one way. You're actually able to say, okay, I want to move left, right, up, down, things like that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, at the end of the day, RPGs allow us as humans to be everything and nothing at the same time. We're able to build a completely different persona, you know, and pretty much roll with our ideas as they come, which is the amazing thing about RPGs, is that you can sit here and say, you want to be a cat, who, super skinny and walks like a dog and instead of meowing barks. Well, you can technically do that. I mean, RPGs are only limited by your imagination. So Jimmy, what's our first thing that we're gonna cover as far as what different types of RPGs?
All right. So the first one we're going to kind of talk about is video game RPGs. and I feel like this is probably what most people would associate, or at least what most people would know, even if they don't know it's an RPG, it's a role play game. That's kind of what they're classified under, and it's things like Final Fantasy, Fable, which is actually the first one that I played, and probably got me into it because you're able to control like how your character grows and the type of abilities they have. But it's things like Final Fantasy, Fable, Diablo, Zelda, um,
Don't forget about Skyrim, the
Skyrim.
Elder Scrolls series.
Yeah, Skyrim's probably the most famous one right now. A lot of people love Skyrim. I've actually never played. Um, uh,
Are you serious?
yeah, I
Not
want
even like
to.
Oblivion, like none of it?
None of it. No,
Oh
my,
man.
my wife doesn't like it, so so I'm actually not allowed to play it. I do want to, but
We'll have to talk after we finish this because I don't want what I have to say to be recorded. But um, yeah. Anyway, so video games are definitely something that is completely has the capability of being an RPG. The upside to video games as an RPG is that you don't necessarily need to have an imagination for it. You can literally sit there and choose your race, if you want to be something completely different. Skyrim have Khajiit, which are like cat human creatures. Excuse me. And you can sit here and say, you want them to be really weak, but be able to charm the hell out of the guards. You can assess everything accordingly. You know, so pretty much that helps people who don't have a severe imagination to get into RPGs without having, to actually put too much thought into anything.
yeah, I definitely also say a buddy of mine actually doesn't like things like tabletop because there's too many options. It really is unlimited, which we'll go into tabletop in a minute. So he actually prefers video games because they're a little bit more limited. Um, as I kind of mentioned before, there's a role in some RPGs, specifically like tabletop, that one of the roles that you have is the GM, the game master, or DM, that's the dungeon master, and they set the scene. They do all that, and they tell you what you can and cannot do. Um, well, in video game RPGs, that role is taken over by the game itself. The gaming system tells you, you can't go and climb this tree. You just can't. Or you can't walk across this body of water. You can't swim in it. You can't. Now, some more modern games might allow you to do that, but there are some that don't. It just depends on the game you're playing. You can't attempt to climb the mountain. It's just not in the gaming system. There's no mechanic for it. And he actually prefers things like that. You only have a couple of select choices to do, and it makes it easier on him, I guess. He just doesn't like that. So that actually opened me up to that possibility. Everybody may not like having that openness of being able to do anything you want. So that is an upside to video games if that's the kind of person you are. If you want limited choices, which isn't a bad thing. It does help. But yeah, anything else you want to talk about for video games, RPGs?
I mean, so definitely something that I want to make sure I do is kind of list like maybe 2, 3 pros and 2, 3 cons to each and every one. I guess one thing I would definitely say that is a con to video games is that limitation, but because at this when like me, I play Skyrim, I've played Oblivion, I did one of the newer ones that they made that was strictly online, and I really didn't like that, but I played all of them, and Like, they're amazing games, but at the end of the day, I've it's too much limitation for me. Uh, so
No, I completely understand.
I personally would say that limitation is kind of a bad thing. It definitely does guide you through the story more, which I guess you can see as a pro. But those limitations at the end of the day, what if you wanted to climb the tree to, sneak up on someone, as they walk by? Well, it's not in the game mechanics. So even if you have that creative mindset, it definitely does limit your ability to do something like that. Um, Something that I would say as a pro for video games is um, pretty much all the work is done for you. The only thing that you kind of have to do is, depending on the type of person that you are and the person that you want to be, you can run in and bash everything and run around killing everything that you see if you realistically want to, or you can actually try to find the reasonings behind things and end up making something completely different, and going about things completely different. So that's one thing I would say as a pro. What would you say is a pro and a con for you for video games?
As you mentioned, for like kind of like an upside to it is that it does give you that direction to go. You have a clear, defined goal. Um, Not saying that others don't, but it's definitely because of the limitations and the limited options, you don't have to think as much about what you're going to do. You may still have to choose, am I going to hit him with a spell or a melee attack or a ranged attack, things like that. But you're still going to have to fight this bad guy. There's not an option to go, hey, let me try and bluff my way out of it. Or let me disguise myself to try and blend in, unless the game allows that. Which I think some do, but most that I've seen don't. So I would definitely say that that's probably a pro, as far as it gives you what we like to call railroading. It gives you a definite path to go down. Um, Even if you change your character and things along the way, you're still heading along that same path. Um, for a con, I think most of the cons are going to come from that limitation, um, where you kind of mentioned some physical. I definitely say one of the others is verbal. You have some responses that you're able to make, but maybe the way you make them, or uh, the what you actually say. You have a list of 4 or 5 options to choose from. Well, what if you don't want to say any of those? What if you want to try and ignore the question that the NPC, the non-player character in the game, asked? Um, you don't have that option. You have to respond in some kind of way. So I'd say that was probably one of those limitations that I think is separate from physical, not being able to climb that tree. That is a drawback. You don't have the verbal interaction that you would in other types of gaming.
Yeah, and kind of to move on to our next point. I mean, um, where we can kind of address our cons is online RPG games, which is what me and how me and Jimmy met originally. And it's most of what me and him participate in through the Absolute Tabletop official group on Facebook, where you literally sit here, at your computer, and you sit here with 3 or 4 other people and a dungeon master or a game master, depending on the type of game that you play, and sit here and tell a story together. That will eliminate the cons that we made for video games, because as long as you can think it, there will be some type of um, mechanic to allow you to do that based on for like Dungeons and Dragons or other, a lot of r- games that involve dice. You roll a dice, and depending on how you roll is depending on whether or not you're able to do it. Uh, so I mean that brings us into our online stuff. So Jimmy, why don't you take
All right, so the next one we're going to go into is online gaming, specifically doing online gaming with RPGs. And we're not talking about like PC games. We're actually categorizing that into the video game set. This is, like he said, we are going to be playing a role play game over the computer with other players. Um, One of those players still plays the role of the DM or GM, and you control your character. But this is there's no I can't even think of what it's called. It's been forever since I played a video game. Controller. There's no controller. There's no stick. There's no buttons to push. This is all verbal. And in most cases, it's what we call theater of the mind. It's all us imagining what is happening in this world. The GM will set the scene up for us. It looks this way. There's these things around. There are these people around, and based off of that, we decide what our character would do. We verbalize it. We tell them. We tell the GM or DM and as well as the other players, so they know how to interact with our character as we say what we are doing, or at least what we would like to do. In most cases, you're going to be able to at least attempt what you're going to do. And then, like you said, the dice roll will depend on how well you do it, if you're able to actually succeed or if you fail horribly, and that all influences. But there's no restriction. Even if there's a giant crater in the ground or a fissure and it's way further than you can jump, you can still try. But you got to take in that you got to figure out if you really want to take that chance. But I definitely say that the biggest difference is there's no limitations with video games or with online play, as well as tabletop play, which will be the next thing we go into. But there's no limitations with it, and there's no visuals as far as, well, normally there are things such as maps, like you can use online with Roll20 allows you to get a grid up and have visual representation of where everything is at. But I think actually one of the more popular ways is theater of the mind. We're just imagining everything. And it's a little bit easier to do that with impromptu games on the fly, and putting things down that aren't, maybe there's no mechanic for in or no representation for it on the grid. You can just throw something in theater of the mind, you can just make it work. I definitely say one of the downsides to doing online compared to some of the others is having, because you're always going to look at a flat model if you use one. There's no option to do like a 3D world where you can actually look at your surroundings, which you do have the option to do that with tabletop. There are 3-dimensional models and things like that you can use, as well as your characters, your figures that represent your character, that you're able to move around the map. I'd say that that's probably my big downfall, or my big con to online gaming.
Well, then what would you say is your pro?
The pro would definitely be timing and the variety of people that you can play with. Like you and me, we don't live in the same time zone and nowhere near each other. So under normal circumstances, we'd never be able to play. We never would have met. But because of being able to meet online and be able to play online, because the first time me and Josh met, we were trying to get a game together, and just whoever replied and was like, "Hey, I'm up to game," and then that's how we ended up meeting. But I definitely say that's the greatest thing about online gaming is you meet a wide variety of people from all over the place. Actually, I can't remember who it was, but a friend of mine through the Absolute Tabletop um, Facebook page group actually was talking about he has a player that is in Africa. So, and he's here in the United States. So that's an entire ocean apart, and yet they're able to play together. And I think that's really awesome to be able to do. So you're getting a wide variety of different players. You're going to be able to meet at different times throughout the day because of the time zone differences. Yeah, I would definitely say that's my biggest pro for it.
Yeah, and I'd have to completely agree with what you've said so far. With doing things online, um, it definitely does add the essence of simplicity. Hey, you know what? I'm gonna be free for a couple hours. In 20 minutes. I want to play some games online. Well, you can do that now because of the fact of modern technology and being able to just go online. And people have used a whole bunch of different things. There's Google Hangouts, which is what me and Jim are using now to record this. There's Roll20. There's Discord. There's um, I forget the other one. There's Skype. People
Isn't
use
there
Skype.
Twitch or something? I think that's the other one.
Yeah, but I think Twitch you stream to Twitch, so I think they
Okay.
still like Google Hangouts to like get everybody on the same page and then stream it to Twitch. I'm not sure how that works with getting a whole bunch of people. I haven't really looked too much into Twitch as a source of streaming for sure. Um, I mean, there are so many different ways that you can sit here, and play and meet people. If it wasn't for the Absolute Tabletop, uh, I would have never met Jimmy. I would have never met Drake. Matt, Tim, James. The people who are very passionate about RPGs. Um, and if it wasn't for Google Hangouts and being able to play online, at this point I wouldn't be playing at all. Because I mean I may live in a big city, but I don't really go to like a game store on a consistent basis, you know, and I don't know a lot of people, personally, so it's just like trying to get a home group going just is almost impossible. So if it wasn't for being able to play online, I personally would pretty much never be able to play. Um, So uh, definitely that would be one of my pros is that, um, no matter where you are, where you live, no matter, what time zone you live in, no matter what your availability, at some point you're going to be able to find someone to play. Um, and I just because I think you pretty much kind of said the same thing. Another pro to online gaming, um, versus for sure video games, but compared to tabletop is well, there's a lot more tools that you can use. Like you know what we're gonna get into is like terrain and stuff like that. Well, when you play online, there are tools that you can download onto your PC or your MacBook or whatever that allow you to build these different types of terrain, within 5-10 minutes versus, 3 to 4 hours, depending on how elaborate you're going, for a home group. Um, a con to online gaming that I would have to say is that um, at the end of the day, I feel it becomes a little bit less immersive, um, because I mean you kind of get that weird sensation, where if I'm talking you know, in this instance, if Jim started talking, I'd feel like I have to stop talking. Where, when you're in person, let's face it, everybody talks over each other in real life. Um, when you're sitting around a table, um, you kind of get that homey feeling where, you're sitting around, you're hanging out, you're not, uh, feeling stressed out about it, versus online where you want everything to be clear, concise, and to the point. So there's a lot less ability to have those type of interruptions. So uh, yeah, I think that would definitely be a con for me. Is just like you're not able to have that type of fun that you would usually have if you're actually hanging out with the people in person. Just because you feel like there's a certain type of etiquette that you have to have just because it's online.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you on that. As you were even saying that, I was thinking about it that, yeah, it's with being sitting down for a tabletop game. It is, if somebody's doing something, you can speak up and be like, hold on, while you're doing that, I'm also doing this. And there's several conversations that can happen, or not conversations, but several in-game things that can happen at the same time, and be said kind of at the same time. Where with playing online, it is generally customary, or at least proper etiquette, I guess is the correct way to say this, to mute yourself when you're not talking, um, just because it cancels out background noise, makes things easier to hear, and it kind of allows the person talking to convey their ideas without being interrupted, and just overall being polite to that person talking. Um, and then once they're done, you can step in and say, okay, well, while you're doing that, I want my character to be doing this. I know this has happened with me a couple of times where a player or another player that I was playing with was doing something really cool, and I wanted to add to it and be like, well, while they're doing that, I'm going to be doing this, and didn't want to interrupt them, so I had to wait. And as soon as they got done, maybe somebody else spoke up. Okay, well, now I'll wait for them, or the game master started to go ahead and do what they were doing, or maybe they just had a long, not monologue so much, but maybe they were interacting with an NPC. So it took a second, and then I forgot what I was going to do, and was really looking forward to doing it and being able to add to that scene, and just couldn't because of the limitations of not wanting to all talk at the same time. So that I definitely would say that is a limitation.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there have been a couple games um, where it's just like I wanted to add something that I thought was really awesome, but you can hear in the other people's voice just because while they were talking, you came up with an idea and you were just like, well, while he's doing that, I want to be doing this just to kind of add to what they were saying. But then you kind of get the overall feeling from everybody else in the party that you're with that it's just like really, you know, and it's not that you were trying to be rude or interrupt. It's just you want to add to the story. You want to add that flavor to the book that you're writing with these people. I mean, let's face it, when you're sitting down for a game, you're spending at least 2 to sometimes 6 or 7 hours depending on, the type of game that you're running, you know, to tell this story. So you're trying to bounce ideas off of each other and make this as, intriguing as possible. But I think there's a lot of stereotypes, or not even stereotypes, just etiquette, quote unquote, that is kind of this universal thing for playing online that you don't get when you play in a tabletop or a video game. So, I mean, that's definitely, I would say, is a con to doing that.
Is there anything else you wanted to add to online gaming?
No, not really. I mean, th- realistically, this is just trying to inform people of the different types of RPG. So I think we kind of got that covered so far.
Coolio. So yeah, so uh, the next thing that are going to talk about, and I would say it's not so much a step up from online gaming. It just gives a different kind of element to it. Is tabletop, also known as pen and paper, and this is not saying that online you don't use pen and paper. I do. I take massive notes on like every session, even if it's just a one shot, a one session game. Um, but that's just the general term that it is known by. It's pen and paper. Um, Tabletop is where you are sitting with a physical group of people, whether it be at a game shop, at your home, out at the mall. I've seen people play at the mall in the food court. And so, you're actually sitting there with the people, and that eliminates that con from the previous one of not being able to talk at the same time. You definitely can. Um, but also kind of goes into a con about it, and I'll get that in a second. But the big thing with this, and I would say, is that you have more options for grids, for having a map on the table of a layout of where everything is. And you have the option for not only I'm not quite sure if it would be one dimensional, two dimensional, but a flat mat. But you also have the option for three-dimensional terrain, which I personally love. I love three-dimensional pieces. So you can actually have a physical castle or forest or whatever there, signifying where you are at. And that allows you to get a little bit more into it, at least for me. You still also have that option for theater of the mind. A lot of times with my home group, we play a lot of theater of the mind, just because we don't have the money for all those really nice props and figurines and things like that to use. Theater of the mind is always an option. But really, that's the only thing, at least that I can think of, that differentiates online from tabletop.
Yeah, and to kind of go off of what he was saying, it's just like with tabletop, you don't have to break the immersion to show everybody something. Like I know when I was in Ghost in the Machine, like there was a couple of times where Drake had to completely stop everything because he was showing us something. Versus when you're at a tabletop, you know, if you have the picture, you have it ready, and as soon as you want everybody to see it, you just place it on the table and say, this is what you're up against. you know you don't have to break the immersion of, well, hold on a second, let me pull this up so that you guys can see it. You can just literally say, boom, here's your monster, or boom, here's your king, boom, here's your reward, you know boom, you're at a lake, here's the lake, or you're at a city, here's the map of the city. And then when you're online, uh, if you guys haven't noticed, which I'm sure everybody has, is that every time I talk, it's on me, but every time he talks, it's on him. Well, if I have I'm screen mirroring a map or something, and Jimmy starts talking, then everybody else can't see the map because someone else is talking while the map is on my screen. So that can be something that definitely breaks a bit of the immersion, because you're just like, wait, I thought we were here, but we're here. So I mean that definitely does end up taking a big part of that, um, where it definitely does interfere, or where it's a little bit better and doesn't have so much interference in your games. So definitely a pro that I have for tabletop. Haven't completely been able to actually sit down and play in a tabletop game. I want to so bad, but I just haven't gotten around to it. Is that element of family. Whether you're sitting around with a group of strangers or with your actual family, um, you get a certain vibe from just sitting around with a group of people. Um, and that vibe keeps people intrigued with the story. Just because you're not staring at a screen to talk to people, but you can actually, swivel your head, look at them, poke them. If they piss you off, you can actually physically slap them. You know, and kind of engage um, with the real world while you're sitting here. Let's face it, playing make believe in a completely different world. So you're able to involve both reality as well as the fantasy, and be able to balance both of them simultaneously. So that's definitely a pro. As to a con, I would just say is the time limitations. Um, it, like scheduling and stuff like that for people within your home city, you know, can be very difficult. Um, I think it's a lot more difficult than trying to find people online. You can have the same group of people, and just because they're able to stay at their house and do it versus actually drive somewhere or walk over to some place, um, it definitely takes a bit more time and effort to try to get that going. So I think that would be my con, is just like the balancing work and stuff with this hobby. What would you say is your pro and con, Jim?
I definitely say that my con would be kind of like what you were saying, is that it's those scheduling limitations. Maybe you don't know a lot of people, um, and it's just like, yeah. So and same thing for me. And I just happened to meet one person that knew other people, and that's how we got our home group going. Um, but before that, I had absolutely nobody, and that was actually before Absolute Tabletop became an actual thing. That was actually right around the same time that I got into to role play. Was the same time that the first session of the Provokers came out and was done. So it was, and if you don't know what the Provokers are, great. Just type the Provokers in on YouTube and you'll find them. Don't worry. And so I didn't have anybody to play with, and that was a real bummer. So me and my wife ended up just learning by ourselves. So I'd say that's probably a big con for uh, at least getting started with playing on a tabletop, playing in real life, or at least in in the physical aspect of it. Um, Sitting down with a group. After you find that group, I think one of the things is going off of as far as a con goes, because you're physically with those people, you do have those limitations for time, but you also have, I think, that mentality of, I don't like this person, but they're the only people I know. So I can't, and I want to play. So I need to just force myself to get along with them or just ignore them to be able to play. Where online, you can say, okay, I don't really enjoy playing with this person. I don't have to play with them. I can go find other people to play with. For pros, I would definitely go touch on the same subject that you did. That it's, you get that companionship and that physical interaction where you can high five the person sitting next to you or across from you when you slay that orc or that dragon, and it's like a boost of morale. Um, Also, my biggest thing for playing with on tabletop is the models and the actual three-dimensional sets. Something I saw that was really cool was, and I don't remember if it was on Mini Terrain Domain or another channel on YouTube, that they made a little quiver with arrows in it to track how many arrows you actually have. And that was just a cool little prop that, you could make and give to your ranger or somebody that uses a bow. And that makes that you're physically seeing that your arrows are being depleted and you start using them. It changes how you play. You start using them more wisely. And that's really cool to me. So those would be my two my pros and my cons for that. The physical models and things like that, and the fact that sometimes you don't like who you play with, and you feel like you have to because maybe you don't know the people, or not
Yeah.
know you don't know enough people to play with, and you find somebody that you just don't like but you want to play.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like I have a whole bunch of like Dungeons and Dragons shirts, and if I know I'm going to the mall or something like that, I'll purposely wear them because let's face it, one of the hardest parts of meeting people in person for it is that, hey, do you play D&D or do you play RPGs? Or stuff like that. Like, because if you just go to the mall and you see someone and you think they're cool or whatever, and you want to possibly talk to them and play with them, you kind of come off as a creep if you just start randomly talking to them. uh so like wearing a shirt that has like the Dungeons and Dragons logo, or I have one for Dragon Grin, which is Tim and James home world that they've made. Or I had recently bought one that was like a Dungeon Master t-shirt where it's just like, it's not my job to kill you, it's just one of my perks. you know Wearing those things that instead of you actually having to sit here and ask questions, you're pretty much advertising yourself at that point, where it's just like if someone sees it and they know what it means, they're most likely going to approach you, because at that point they see it and they either want to laugh with you and be like, huh, I play too, or so that way it automatically opens that window of communication.
Yeah, I think there's that sense of immediate kinship. Like, I know you play and I know I play, so it's not going to be weird for me to come up and start talking to you about it.
Yeah, I mean, and that's like one of the biggest cons that I have is just like for tabletop, meeting people to play, unless you have a lot of friends and you guys are like almost the exact same, and like you hang out with people that are just like clones of who you are, it's just like it doesn't end up working in the long run, um unless you're going to be very much open and going to 10 different gaming stores to find four people that you want to sit down at a tabletop with every month. um but at the same time, what would we say is even better than being able to visualize terrain?
All right, so the the way we've been doing this, and the way I kind of visualize setting this up, is you're going from at least immersive, or immersiveness might be the wrong terminology, but you got video games, then we've got online, then we got tabletop. The most immersive that you can get when you're playing a role play game is LARPing. And a lot of people actually don't know what LARPing is. And if you've ever gone by somebody or a group of people that are dressed up as wizards or fighters or elves or whatever, and they're having this battle in the middle of the park or something, that's LARPing. It stands for live blah 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 live action role play, and so or that's LARP. LARPing is live action role playing, but so and this is where you actually take on every aspect except for, of course, if you're playing an orc, you're not gonna have tusks unless you make them. Um, but you're literally taking on every aspect of your character. Everything you do is in character. My wife actually has experience. I don't. She has experience with LARPing. Um, she was in this LARPing group or game thing that was called Avagast, and it was a medieval setting, pretty much D&D. And you created your character, created a backstory, you had an occupation, and when you went there, from the moment you crossed the gates, you are in character. So you talk as your character, you move as your character. This is you 100% physically acting out and responding as your character. It is the most immersive thing you can do. Um, and the only limitations to it are what are the limitations of the universe. I mean, you obviously can't fly, but they would have some kind of thing to symbolize you flying. If you're throwing a fireball, they normally have like red hacky sacks that you throw, things of that nature. But if you want to go try and climb a tree, can you climb that tree? If not, then your character can't climb that tree. It's pretty great. It like I keep saying, it's the most immersive that you can get. I definitely say that that's the downside, though, is that you don't have that option for flying or throwing a fireball. It semi breaks the immersion of it. You're not. You always have to picture that in your head.
And it also eliminates the chance that you might be able to do it too. I mean, at the end of the
Yeah.
day, with video games or online or tabletop, you know for video games, like if you want to try to climb a mountain, well, you might not be able to physically climb it, but there's always that weird hack where if you jump from place to place to place to place to place, and you want to sit there and jump for 10 minutes, you'll eventually get to the top because there's only certain things that they patch and stuff like that, you know, or with online and tabletop, if you roll high enough, or, depending on the system, sometimes even low enough. Because I know in the black hack, you have to roll under your ability instead of over. Um, you're still have the chance of being able to do it. Um, and that would definitely be, kind of like a con. It's just like it eliminates that chance of being able to do it. Um, Go ahead.
I don't know. I was just gonna kind of add to that, which was you are also limited by the fact that, like with Avagos that my wife played in, they actually had actual wrestling tournaments where it wasn't. It was like actually physically wrestling the other person. So if she, who in reality in real life isn't super strong, if she wanted to play a fighter and wanted to join that, she's going to be at a huge disadvantage, even if her character in game supposedly has all this experience and all this combat prowess under her belt. She's still limited by her physical attributes. So you kind of have to. It does limit the kind of characters you play, because you have to think about what can I actually do. Because then it's no fun if I'm going to play a fighter and I have no muscle at all, and so I can't actually fight these people. So I would definitely say that's probably, just adding on to what you were saying, that's probably one of those downsides as well.
AKA, if you're gonna play in real life, just play a magic user. Let's face it, no one has magical powers, so no one can really fight you on it. Just say you want to cast something and cast it.
Yes. Yep. And it evens the playing field for everybody. Just we're all magic casters. That's it. I'm just gonna cast spells left and right. But yeah.
I mean, let's face it, you can't necessarily physically judge, a magical ability in a world that doesn't have magic. It's unrealistic and impossible to do. So I'm just gonna. You've convinced me. I'm not even gonna do anything else. I'm just gonna be like, I'm gonna be a mage. Screw you all. I'm not strong. I can't move all that well. I can't climb for nothing. I'm gonna be the the weak little mage that stands in the background, and whenever I see an opening, cast fireball at your dumbass.
Yep, no, definitely. Um, I would say though, going off of that, one of the advantages is the immersion because you there's I think with online and tabletop, and I see it with one of my home group players. She doesn't know how to react um, in character because she's trying to figure out because there's a bunch of stopping points. So she might get into character for a minute and then get out of character because we start talking about something else, which is also probably a downside to tabletop is, because you have that openness of anybody can talk anytime, you have side conversations going on. Um, but with LARPing, from the moment you start, you are in character. So it helps. Doesn't completely alleviate it, but it does help with being in character because you should at least should have that mindset of once we start, I am in character. I am going off of I can't even think of it now. Going off of a game that
Lord
I've played,
Humplebottom.
Lord Humblebottom. Yeah, which is a character I'll be playing actually this Friday. Once it starts, I am Lord Humblebottom. So I will talk like Lord Humblebottom, and I will refer to myself as Lord Humblebottom. Um, so there's, I think that helps, and I think it actually makes it a little bit more fun because if Lord Humblebottom has a hunchback, I can just walk around all crazy like, and it just makes that a little bit more fun for me. And while other people are talking, instead of me having to say, "Hey, I want to be doing this," I can just start doing it and see who realizes that I'm picking my nose while they're talking. Which, just to clarify, Lord Humblebottom is a goblin. So if that helps. But yeah, I think that's probably my biggest con or biggest pro. Definitely not a con. Is that you really can get into character. It's pretty fun. I've never played actual or done actual LARPing. Um, but I mean, I've done things like that at the mall all the time. I'll start acting all weird and take on the persona of a different character the entire time I'm there and just do random things that my character would do. And that's pretty fun for me to do it around other people that are doing the exact same thing. That's pretty awesome. Um,
Yeah, now I'm gonna have to start looking for LARPing in my home city, just to
it
see if that's even a thing where I'm at.
well, it might be. There's a couple of different groups that you can find. But me thinking about that actually made me realize, there is another huge downside to LARPing, and that is the cost. Like it costs money, for our books, our handbooks and our core rule books, maybe mats and figurines and three-dimensional models if we're using them. But with LARPing, you have to make your costume, you have to make or buy your weapons, you have to. My wife played a person, a distiller. I think she sold beverages, and she actually had to go and buy these beverages to sell them in game that weren't for not real coin. It was in game coin. So she actually had to spend money for stuff that just to play, and she wasn't making any kind of real profit off of it. And then she had to, because it's a medieval setting, there's no cigarettes. If you wanted to smoke, you had to use a pipe or an old-fashioned kind of cigar, no tips or anything. If your clothes had to be of the time, so no like I'm trying to think of something that no like fancy metal buttons and stuff. It's all wooden or things like that. So you actually either had to buy or make all your stuff, and that gets very costly. So that's definitely a big downside to LARPing.
Which is also the upside to having a wife that knows how to sew. Just saying. Because at the end of the day, let's face it, if you have someone in the family that can sit here and knows how to make all this stuff, it helps. It doesn't necessarily reduce the cost, but at the end of the day, you pay for the quality of game that you want. If you want to sit here and spend $5 and that's all you want to pay to get in the game, you'll most likely still have fun, but it's not going to be as immersive as you would want. You know, I have a really big issue with heavy combat with no role play, but then when I have a lot of role play, I have an issue because it's not enough combat. With like LARPing, you control how much of each are in it. If you want to sit here and say, well, I want to be a murder hobo, well, you can go out there and be a murder hobo and kill everybody, because that's your style of play. But you can also sit there and say, well, is there a tavern close by, and then sit there at the bar for 4 hours talking with the barmaid just because you want that aspect of role play. So everything that happens is kind of up to you. You get what you give. I mean, for Dungeons and Dragons, you can ask my wife. Like, I've spent a lot of money between like books and you know, um, I have a Wormwood Dungeon Master screen coming sometime later in the year. Um, which, let's face it, Wormwood isn't a cheap company to get stuff from. Whenever I get it, I'll probably do a video of me opening it and being all excited for all of it. But until then, I gotta sit here and wait. But there are so much stuff that you can buy for this hobby. Um, I'll use Drake Warren from RPG Construct as an example. He has, I think he had said like 5 or 6 pounds of dice, which, let's face it, dice are light as hell. So to have 5 or 6 pounds of dice, unless you're getting them at like yard sales or like stealing them from stores, that's a lot of money.
Which we do not condone thievery at all, unless it's in
No,
game.
and even in game, let's face it, as a dungeon master, you at the end of the point, by the end of the game, you're trying to get back at them for stealing. Um, you know, 5 or 6 pounds of dice is a lot of money. Even if it's bought over 20 years, 5 or 6 pounds of dice, that still is, probably close to $1,000 that you could have used on other stuff. I have like 3 or 4 sets of skull splitter dice, and they're like $30 a set. So that's, what, $120 worth of dice, and that's only 4 sets of dice. Imagine if I had 5 pounds, at each set weighing, a tenth of a pound. You know what I'm saying? That this hobby is a very expensive hobby. A part of me wants to call over my wife and ask her probably how much money I've spent just to prove that point. But at the end of the day, you will only get the quality that you put into it.
On that note, though, some people like that sound of the dice hitting the table. I like physically rolling dice. A lot of people do, but there are other ways around it. You can buy PDFs, which are normally, not always, but normally cheaper than the physical copies of like handbooks and guides and stuff like that. And you can there's free dice roller apps out there that you're able to get.
There's also the SRD for like the handbook and stuff like that, which are
Right.
like pretty much free.
Mm,
Like you can just Google search stuff and it's there, just because it's like open source, material.
right. So yeah, so don't think that you have to spend the money, but it definitely you get out of what you put into it. And just your personal preference. If you like, I like flipping through a physical book. I like the sound of dice hitting the table and physically rolling dice. So I want to have that stuff for me. It is not completely necessary. You can get the Dice Roller app or find things online that are either free or cheap, and it's perfectly fine. Um, Going back to LARPing though, real quick, I realized that I kind of capitalized on like a fantasy or older style fantasy, like medieval kind of time. They are not limited to that. I've actually seen a group, or not seen, but I've read about a LARPing group based out of Las Vegas that did a kind of twist on Supernatural, the TV show, and they would go around to varying businesses that were in on it and that had hauntings, and they would go through, and it was basically like a mystery kind of thing. And had to, there was one person that set it all up, and then they were the hunters, and they had to go through and navigate the city for a game that took months to finish out, just because they would only get together for like one weekend every month and do this. So it's not just limited, and that was based in modern time. So it was literally them just going around in everyday life, dressed normally, or if they wanted to dress a specific way, they wanted to walk around like Blade with the black on black and the trench coat and things like that. Um, so it's not just limited to older style or older settings. You can definitely do modern LARPing games, and they're out there. You just have to look for them.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, yes, you can do, play and everything for free, but at the end of the day, being a consumer of RPG products, I will say that there is a certain pride and, kind of like self fulfilling thing that you do get from being able to say, these are my dice, this is my book, this is, you know, my map, this is my this is my that, versus saying, well, I got this online, so what can I do with it? So there is that sense of pride and stuff like that that you do get from buying the stuff. But let's face it, to actually start playing or to start reading up on Dungeons and Dragons and Fate and all these different RPGs, you can pretty much find at least a basic copy for free, as long as all you have to pretty much do is like Google search it, and you'll pretty much find everything on all things. Everything nowadays is just a click away. So especially to just like read it to see if you're interested in it, everything's just a click away. um, I'm just the weird guy who likes having physical copies of everything. um, so that's why I have like 5 or 6 different Monopoly sets, is just because I like having physical sets of
And
stuff.
Monopoly is awesome.
That too. Um, and then I have the Star Wars X-wing sets, both of them, which are amazing. They come with miniatures, and you can buy extra miniatures and stuff like that. So they're awesome, you know. Um, but anyway, back to LARPing. I'm getting severely sidetracked with my collection of crap. Um, I've never done it. It's definitely on my bucket list of things to do. Um, but if I'm gonna do it, I'm literally gonna have to go to like Joann's or Michael's and just buy all the stuff to make everything. And like Jim said, doing something like that is very expensive to do, especially if you can't make the stuff for yourself. Like if you have to go and have someone make it for you, that is beyond expensive. Um, but if you feel good enough that you might be able to do it with like a needle and thread, you can pretty much do whatever. Um, but kind of the pro, even though it's a con with that, is that because you made it yourself, you have it, for as long as you can maintain it. So you can reuse the same costume over and over and over again just because you made it the one time. Um, so, like with Dungeons and Dragons, there's mages, sages, wizards, all of that. They all fall into the same category, and you can use the same outfit for all of the different categories because they're all the same, magic users, you know. So that's also, even though it's a con, it's also slightly a pro because you don't have to spend so much money on buying different materials for all the different swords. You can have one for all of it. So it's kind of a pro, even though it's a con.
It's a double-edged sword. It has that good part about it that you can reuse it, but it does cost that money to start up. Um, yeah, and another probably a downside to it. It may sound like there's a lot of downsides, but it's really just because I would say because it's so immersive, because it is in reality. There's no leeway for well, we don't need anything. You need stuff, and one of the things you absolutely need is somebody to set it up. I would say you could go and just try and get like a group of friends together and go into the woods or go out and just do stuff, which is completely possible if you and your friends have that mindset where you're able to do that and stay in character, stay on that path. But normally you're going to need somebody to set it up. And that person setting it up is sinking 10 times more money than you are into it, because they are going around to, like the one my wife, was in. They had a whole park converted, like cabins and stages and things like that. Like it was made for this, so it wasn't something that uh, I mean, you can find places that are just there, but then you have to get permission to use it. You have to make sure that's okay with, if you're going to have a large event, that it's okay with the city that you do this there because of you have random people walking through. There's a lot of stuff that kind of goes into LARPing, but it's a give and take. There's so much that goes into it, but I honestly believe that there is so much you get out of it, just because it is quite the experience. It's much different than just playing a theater of the mind or map style game. Um, Something else that you can kind of look at it too is a form of LARPing is also like a murder mystery party, um, or a murder mystery cruise. Those kind of things are LARPing. It's even if you're just playing yourself, it's still a interactive game where everything you do or say is affecting the game, the world around you. Still has to be set up, still has to have somebody kind of running the show, because somebody's dead. And you're not going to go and kill somebody this is part of the game. But um, but those are a little bit less complex ways. So if you ever think that maybe LARPing might be for you, definitely look at they're relatively cheap. You can actually find them online for free. Some of them, for murder mystery parties, and you just need between like 5 to 10 friends that like understand what you're doing and wanting to do, even if they've never done it before. They can either play as themselves, they can play as a pre-gen character that this is who you are, this is your name, this is what your occupation is, this is your goal, and you just make a night of it. And at the end of the night, it's who done it. It's essentially real life Clue. And that, I would say, if you're going to try and do LARPing but you're not sure, give a murder mystery a try.
Yeah, for sure. That's definitely something me and my wife have been wanting to do for a while. Is like go to an actual like murder mystery. I'm lucky enough where there's one not far from where I live, where it's like an actual place where like it's all set up. Like the entire place is strictly made for murder mystery. So, like, just me and my wife wanting to do it allows that option of saying, well, I'm going to go here and meet up with all these random people to do this. So it adds to that where you don't need to know a lot of people, which is something that I struggle with. Like, I work like 12 hours a day. So by the time I get home, I'm going to sleep usually, or talking with Jimmy on here, and then waking up to do it all over again. Um, so, I mean, realistically, having the ability to kind of just be like, well, I want to do this, but I don't really know anybody. Murder mystery is definitely something where you don't really need to know anyone unless you're organizing it yourself, where you can just go to this place and it's all done for you. All you have to do is come dressed as the part. So, I mean, that's just my 2 cents on that one. You brought up murder mystery.
Oh yeah, no. And the only reason I thought about that was because my dad actually just did this at his house, and so it's kind of fresh in my mind. And I was thinking about, well, LARPing is anytime you're taking on the aspects of a character and interacting with other characters within a world with a common goal, or a goal in general. It doesn't have to be common. But yeah, no, that's something that's on my bucket list too. I really want to do a murder mystery. Um, but okay, is there anything else that you want? Any? Because I know you didn't really know what LARPing was at first. Um, is there any questions that maybe you have about LARPing?
I mean, uh, LARPing is very simple at its core. Um, it is what it sounds like it is. It's live action role play. Um, so, I mean, you are what you want to be. And you dress the part, you act the part, you are the part. Um, so, coming at it from an actor standpoint, such as myself, it's just like you are embodying this character. Everything you say is, in character. Everything you do, everything, you know, all the clothes that you're wearing, everything reflects the character. Like, you can't say that your character is bald and have a full set of hair. You can't say that, your guy looks like
Shave your
Wolverine.
head.
Yeah, but see, here's the thing with LARPing: if you want to say that you're gonna be bald, then you have to shave your head, like, or get one of those nude things that they use where it's just like looks nude. Like they sell that, but you know that's just something where it's just like with LARPing, you're limited based on your physical attributes. You know, I'm kind of gonna take this really bad, and I really hope it doesn't come back to bite me in the butt. But you can't say that you're the most handsomest thing in the world and look uglier than a twig stuck in dirt. Like, at the end of the day, you granted you might embody the persona, but let's face it, if you want to say that you're sexier, than everybody else, and you look like a cow, like the butt, like that's gonna affect things, in a LARP world, because I mean, if you want to have that type of persona and you go into a pub and they see you and you're saying that you're the sexiest thing ever, but they look at you and you're not that.
and and to maybe take any kind of snowball effect that might come towards you on away from you on that. The reason for that is because, especially with LARPing, if you're in a large group like my wife was, not everybody knows your character. So if you're going to try and play that kind of character, you do have to kind of look the part, because otherwise just because you are a real person, and the people that you're talking to are real persons. They're not necessarily their characters, so they are going to form opinions about you. And so if you're trying to play that Gaston kind of thing where, I have a six pack and huge biceps and pecs and all this, and you don't, then they're going to look at you, even without you saying all that, like you're somebody else. You're this weakling, or you're overweight, or whatever. Um, and so it doesn't play right, because you're not actually looking that way. Where with advantage to tabletop or online gaming, you can say your character is that, and it doesn't matter. I mean, I could literally be the ugliest person on earth statistically and play Gaston from Beauty and the Beast and be just this super sexy man thing that's just everybody wants me. Um, LARPing, you don't have that advantage. Um, so just trying to like steer that away from any kind of backlash you might get from that. That's the reason why. It's because people are going to form opinions about you because they don't know who your character is. You can't walk up and people immediately know, oh, this is Lord Humplebottom, who believes he's the sexiest goblin that ever lived, which he does. And you can't assume people are going to know that. They're going to look at you like you are you. And then based off of your actions and your verbal cues, judge your character, as well as your appearance. I mean, if you dress like a bum, they're going to assume you're playing a bum character. So just kind of going off of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've kind of covered everything, and at this point, it's just the ramblings of a madman from here on out.
And Lord Humplebottom has his opinions.
Yes,
Yeah,
that no
no,
one ever really pays attention to.
he believes they do, though.
Yeah, I'm sure he does. Like, this Friday is definitely going to be interesting. So just to kind of give a little bit on that, um, this Friday, which is June 23rd,
22nd, I believe. Is it 23rd, 22nd?
I
It's
think
this
it's the
Friday.
23rd.
It's
Well,
let's see,
2017.
23rd. 23rd. I was about to say 2013.
Yeah,
23rd.
June 23rd, 2017. Me and him are starting a campaign um, with a few other people. Um, and it's a first time DM. Um, she's never DM'd a game realistically online. So this is all new to her. Um, I don't even think we've really talked after the session 0 about our characters or anything. So
Nope.
all of this is going to be very interesting because I don't remember anything that we talked about.
I have notes.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. I'll probably have to talk to you tomorrow about those notes to kind of remember what the hell I was talking about because I don't remember anything.
Well, we just to like plug in that, we have a video that we recorded it for everybody to see a session 0, which is where you sit down with your game master, your dungeon master, and talk about what you're going to be doing, and that is specific to online gaming and tabletop gaming. To kind of tie that into this, a session 0 is where you sit down and this is the campaign from them that I want to run. Are you as the players okay with that? And then as the players, okay, yeah. Like one of the questions she asked was about like gore and violence and things like that. Are we all okay with her going into descriptive details about that? And it was up to us to say yes or no. And we got a couple of different opinions. Like I personally don't care. I love it. Anybody that knows me, I am super heavy gore. But then I know we got some opinions that, was I'm okay with it, but try not to go into like super heavy detail that it's just all we see. That's all the entire campaign is. So, that's something to kind of keep in mind since we're going over like what is a role play game, one of the aspects of that is sitting down and figuring out what kind of game you're going to play, which is a session zero. Um, but yeah, and then we do have a video on that, so go check it out.
Yeah. Yeah, I honestly did forget that we recorded that. So I'll probably watch that tomorrow at work. Um, but kind of to go from that, um, session zeros are amazing that you can only really have um, for tabletop and online games. Because at the end of the day, with like LARPing, you kind of go into it knowing what it is. Um, you don't get to put your input on it. Like you going to the event means that you're okay with the things that may or may not happen throughout the LARP. Um, with a session zero, you can sit there and say, well, you know, I'm okay with murder, but you kill a dog and I'm gonna break down. You know, those little things that you're not okay with, at the end of the day, um, are things that you're able to bring up and help affect the story. I know, I think it was Saturday or no, Saturday, I was in a game with Philip. It wasn't recorded or anything, but he had asked me a couple questions on what I kind of wanted to see or have, that was common knowledge to my character. And he took what I said and ran with it. And everything that I said was completely throughout the entire, you know, episode or with throughout the entire session. Because I was playing a mobster um, who um, was a hired killer, you know, and he literally took that and ran with it completely. Um, so you're able to influence it in those ways. But I think that's pretty much wraps up everything that we were kind of going to talk about. Make sure you guys come by our channel this Friday at 8 o'clock. We're going to be doing, what did she say she wanted to call it in the beginning, or something of that nature? I can't remember completely. Um, but we'll definitely be recording that game, and I'm really trying to look up what she wanted to call it in the background here, and it was going to be called In the Balance. In the Balance is what she wanted to call it. So we're going to be starting off a new campaign with Sarah Hammock and her brother, I want to say,
Yeah, it was
um,
her brother.
and me and Jim. So definitely stay tuned this Friday for In the Balance, as me and Lord Humplebottom explore her world and her brain. So for sure do that. Um, in the meantime, is there anything you want to say before I end it?
Um, no, I think that's it. We're gonna start trying to put out some more content. Specifically, I know we're gonna start going through for D&D. We're gonna start going through like the player's handbook. Start looking and breaking things down for everybody. The channel is really directed at new players, or DMs and GMs, but new people that are new to role play games. We are going to kind of focus a little bit more heavy on Dungeons and Dragons, and just because that's something that oh no, we lost him. I think we're still live. We lost Josh. Josh, come back, Josh. But we are gonna, just in case we're still recording, we are gonna try and uh, that threw me all off. We're going to be focusing a little bit more on um, uh, Dungeons and Dragons. Welcome back. Um, uh, we're going to focus a little bit more on Dungeons and Dragons because it's something that me and him are most familiar with. We'll probably go into a couple of others, and eventually we will go into other systems. And I'm probably going to start putting out some content on a system I'm creating. So there, we're going to start adding some more things to the channel. We've been a little bit preoccupied here recently just because of work, life. I'm getting married next month, so I've been planning all kinds of things around that, and that's been taking up a lot of my time. Yeah. So that's kind of where we're at. We're gonna, like I said, sound like a broken record, but we're gonna put out more content for everybody. So make sure you keep coming back, like, subscribe, so you get those updates. Hit that little bell button right there when you subscribe, so that you're updated whenever we put something new on.
Yeah, for sure. And until next time, you have been watching RPG Enlightenment, where we believe that at the end of the day, we can all be enlightened in some way, shape, or form. So until then, you always seek enlightenment.
And be sure to join Lord Humblebottom this Friday.
I think you have the end online thing. Just stop broadcast.
I don't know. Do I?
I don't know.
I don't think so. Sorry, guys. Technical difficulties.
Give me 2 seconds.
Yeah, I don't have it.
I'm pretty sure I do. Give me 1 second, because I probably came in as myself instead of.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I did. You're already in.
But yeah, so if y'all watch this,
there we go.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that's why, because I was in as my personal profile instead of the
RPG Enlightenment.
Yeah. Technical difficulties.
It happens.
Whatever.
It's because it kicked you out. I'm just gonna blame it on Hangouts.
Yeah, for real, Hangouts is a really weird. But anyway, until next time, may you only seek enlightenment.
See you guys later.